Oh, hey. If you're here, that's either because you're new and looking for suggestions, or you're here to tell me I'm wrong about my suggestions. Fret not. I'm here for content, for you, regardless of your motivation. I'm gonna give you my personal ranking from most difficult to easy by role and by class of what you should start out with, as well as the whys. Keep in mind, for all of you who did come here to dethrone my opinion, this is only an opinion. I don't think my way is the only way, and I don't think that any person's advice or perspective is one size fits all. What's gonna work for each individual person is always gonna be different. But if you're not sure, I got you. Let's go. So as you're getting through this video, if you find that you don't need specific recommendations on which classes to pick, you can always check out my roles video, which will talk in a little more broad details on how to really refine what you want to play and why, based on the type of player you are coming into FFXIV. I will tell you that I play just about every class in the game in some capacity or another, with a couple of exceptions that I will talk about when I get to them. So I'm gonna, as I mentioned a second ago, I'm gonna break this apart first by roles, and then role and then class. Least recommended role and the classes within them, and then the most recommended role and the classes within them, to kind of cascade through the information for you. And I will explain the whys for everything as I go, so buckle in. Hopefully it'll be informative and helpful. I do want to say this again, just because I think that something is easier or harder, that does not mean that you can't go for that anyway. If that's something you want to try and do, I will tell you the reasons why I think that, and then you can make your own decision based on what works best and what's right for you. So we're going to start with my least recommended role for a new player, which is going to be healer. I've faced comments in the past that talk about I should not be dissuading people from healing, and I want to clarify right at the get-go, I'm not trying to dissuade you from healing. I do think healing is the hardest job to start out the game playing, so I do not recommend starting out with it. If you want to do that anyway, I support you. It's just not my recommendation for a brand new player, brand new to MMOs. So let's say you don't care about that, and you're like, yeah, well, I want to heal, so shut up, Azure. All right, it's fair. Let me at least give you a couple of recommendations. There are two healers you can start out as: White Mage and Scholar. White Mage is a pure healer, which means that when you see somebody's HP go down, you throw out a heal, their HP goes up. That's the mindset of a White Mage. A Scholar is a barrier healer. They are proactive. They know damage is coming soon. They throw out a shield or a barrier. The person takes less damage when they're hit. Of these two, I would say Scholar is the worst choice of starting class. I love Scholar. It is my main barrier healer. Playing a barrier healer when you don't have a good base of when damage is coming and things like that can be a little more challenging. And unlike a pure healer, barrier healers don't have as many tools for reactive healing. Scholar does have quite a few, but it's not as many, and it's not as potent as a pure healer would be. That's not to say that Scholar is a bad class. I love Scholar. It's just a little bit harder when you're brand new to grasp and get into. White Mage is going to be the recommended healer if you're choosing to take their healer route, because rather than needing to be able to anticipate stuff that you may not necessarily know, the math formula here is you see somebody's health go down, you heal them. Easy. You get the downloaded information with your eyes that something has happened, you react with a button accordingly. It's as simple as that. Not to mention, White Mage has a few more forgiving tools. They literally have a button that once every 3 minutes, you can just fill somebody's health up, regardless of how much health they've lost. It's a very nice button to have, and no other healer has that. So it does have a lot more tools that can be more forgiving, and it's not super complicated. There's not a lot of nuances in the abilities. They're all fairly straightforward for quite some time. So if you must heal, I would recommend a White Mage. But healer is still ranked last in my suggestions of roles and classes to start out as. So then next would be tanks. I also don't recommend starting out as a tank. It is easier than healer, but it's still better if you have more knowledge. So your two tank options right at the start, assuming again that you're not going to take this advice and you want to be a tank, again, I totally respect that, are Warrior and Paladin. This one's a lot more simple. Warrior just edges out Paladin by a little bit, and the only reason for that is because Warrior has a lot more self-healing on the long term, so it doesn't really matter if your healer is struggling a little bit. You can usually keep yourself alive. Paladin has that ability too, but it functions differently and isn't as aggressive as Warriors is when it comes to that. Additionally, Paladin has at least 1 or 2 buttons that create kind of a weird fit if you don't know any better, and that's a deeper detailed conversation. But I would say choose a Warrior. Honestly, if you want to be a tank, you can choose either or. They're very, very comparable in terms of starting out as a tank if you're starting out as a tank. Though if you want to keep it even easier, I suggest picking a DPS. Smooth transition. So before I jump into DPS ranking, there are actually 3 kinds of DPS in this game. Melee DPS, range DPS, and magical range DPS. Melee DPS are exactly what they sound like. They're in on the action. They're in the face of the enemy and they just, going at it. Range DPS, same thing. They attack from afar. Magical DPS also attack from afar, but they deal in spell casting. Which is why I'm going to break this down by these first and tell you, I do not recommend magical range DPS as your starting class. Now I know you're thinking, and I know a lot of people are thinking, this is the high swords and magic fantasy game. I want to be a mage. Again, if you want to do that, do it. The only reason that I don't suggest doing it starting out is because cast bars. Cast bars mean you have to stand still and take hits. And I'm speaking not from my experience, but from the experience of people that I've helped to get started. Having to stand still while you're getting beat up can be scary for some players. So that's half of the issue. The other half of the issue is there's some special techniques that you can learn to mitigate this a little bit, but I don't think that you really learn those starting out. Playing other DPS can be more forgiving, where casters either have to stop casting in order to get somewhere safe, or take the hit and cast their spell anyway. Should you choose to be a magical DPS anyway, by far and away, Black Mage is harder, because Black Mage's rotation changes pretty much every 10 levels for the majority of their leveling experience. With every other class, you get a pretty static rotation of buttons that you're going to be hitting at any given time, but Black Mage's changes constantly. You reach a certain level, one of your buttons doesn't get used anymore. You reach another level, another button doesn't get used anymore. That's not conducive to a learning experience. I think Black Mage is the hardest class to start out on when you don't know what you're doing. Summoner, I'm going to preface with, I don't play Summoner, like at all. So I'm going to give you this information with knowledge that I've gained and not from firsthand experience. Everybody says that Summoner is the easiest class to play in the game. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't disagree with it either. Especially, or at least in terms of magical DPS, it's absolutely the easiest class to play. Again though, I don't know Summoner well enough to be able to speak on that in more detail. So I'm not gonna make things up. I'm only telling you that I know for sure Black Mage is harder to learn and continue with as a new player, and that the community at large says Summoner is easier. So taking those two pieces together, I think it's a pretty safe bet that you shouldn't choose Black Mage if you're going to choose a magical DPS. Now, that said, I don't think you should choose a magical DPS at all. If you're looking for something easier, there are plenty of options. So next then, we'll talk about melee DPS. I think melee DPS is the second easiest role choice. There are pros and cons to this, but you have 2 class options here. You can choose a monk or a dragoon. By far and away, dragoon is easier. Dragoon does not get that many buttons for a really long time. Truth be told, when I picked up Dragoon later on in my 14 career, I found it boring because of how little it had going on compared to all the other classes that I played. But I think starting out, that's a good thing, because that means you're not going to get overwhelmed with buttons and abilities. I think it leads you on a very easy pace. The one caveat to melee DPSs is that they have what's called positionals. You stand at a certain side of the boss in order to deal more damage. Early on, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. It's not like the damage is going to be the make or break it case for whether you beat a boss sub level 60 or 70, really. But that just means that they do have a layer of complexity that the other DPSs don't have that needs to be considered. Monk has a rotation that is not straightforward. Most melee DPSs have a very clear 1-2-3 combo. 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3, not including all the extra buttons that you end up weaving in. Even later game, while Dragoon has a bit of a long rotation, it's all very much in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or however it looks. Monk, if you have that same 8 buttons, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 4, 6, 3. I'm probably not expressing the correct order of that, but the point is that the rotation bounces around based on what's optimal and the order you're pressing your buttons in. So I find it to be not as straightforward, especially if you're a controller player. It's kind of an annoying rotation to get used to. Dragoon is so much simpler and more straightforward, albeit again, I personally found it a bit boring when I got to it. The animations on Dragoon get super cool later on, but you got to get there. It takes some time. That brings us to our last class, and the class that I think is the easiest class to learn and pick up and play as, starting out as a brand new player in Final Fantasy XIV, and that is Bard, Archer into Bard. Why? Why is this such an easy starting class? I can give you a couple of reasons. The first one is, unlike melee DPS, they don't have to worry about positionals at all. They just shoot their arrows, nice and easy. They don't even have a specific rotation. You have one button. Occasionally you will get a proc, which will cause another button to light up. When that button lights up, you hit that button. So it doesn't have a rotation in the standard capacity. It doesn't have any casts, so you can run away from things while you're attacking them. You don't have to stand there and take hits. And of course, unlike healers and tanks, there's no additional supporting responsibilities that you need to worry about other than making sure you're pressing your buttons. I do think long-term, Bard can be a little bit trickier because it deals in a lot of what's called dot management, damage over time. You put a type of poison on them, and when that poison runs out, you restock that poison. But you're still only pressing one button. And you have your songs that you need to make sure you're using. You press a song, it stays on. When the song's over, you press the next song. But that's all much longer term. From at least 1 to 50, if not further, Bard, in my opinion, is the easiest thing to play. And it teaches you a lot of different fundamental skills that you need to understand about the game without being punishing. Being able to attack on the run when you're going through a dungeon. Melees will not be able to keep up with mobs if they're not sprinting. You can usually attack mobs regardless because you're ranged. You also get a fun button that makes the whole party move faster, so that's fun. And unlike melees, you're also standing out of danger whenever you're fighting against things. So in my personal opinion, I would consider it to be the easiest starting class. I'm not saying it is the easiest class of all time, because as you get into higher levels, there are classes that feel easier than Bard. But starting out, it teaches you a lot of fundamentals, and it's a very straightforward class to play. Toki started out as a caster, but would panic whenever things would start beating her up on the overworld, and quit the game for a good 6-7 months before she really got into it, because she was like, I can't do this. And then I recommended switching to Bard, and she's now almost done with Shadowbringers. And the funny part of this is Bard was exactly the class that she needed to get into the game, but now she doesn't play Bard at all. She plays Dark Knight, she plays Samurai, and she plays Dancer. And she enjoys those significantly more than Bard. So with that, my recommendations are from least to most. Healer the least, but if you must, I would choose a White Mage. Tank, if you must. Honestly, either or is fine, but Warrior would be the recommendation. DPSs, I don't recommend magical DPSs. If you do choose that route, do not choose a Black Mage, choose a Summoner. Melee DPSs, I recommend choosing Dragoon over a Monk. And the number one class I recommend if you're starting this game out and you're not comfortable with MMO mechanics or anything of the sort is going to be a Bard or Archer, which is going to be, in my opinion, the safest class to start out as. And again, that doesn't mean that that's the best class to play till endgame, but it is a good place to start, get your foundations for the game, and then pivot into things that you feel like you're more comfortable to take on. Once you've reached that point, then feel free to check out either my video on Tankxiety if you're nervous about tanking, or my tips to healing if you really want to jump into the healing route. And again, I'm going to say, I play all of the roles, and I think all of them are fun for their own reasons. As much as I recommend DPS first, I also think that DPS is not as exciting as the other roles can be. But everything's different and it's all a matter of your own preference. So I'm never going to tell you that your choice is wrong. I'm only going to offer you recommendations to take the path most easily traveled so that you can really get into the game and not be turned off early because of a decision that you made that you ended up regretting, or just didn't know that was not the ideal decision, or was too hard, or whatever the case may be. I want you to start 14 and I want you to be able to enjoy it and continue playing it and love it as much as I do. If you need any help or suggestions with any of the classes, except maybe Summoner, I gotta get on that. Feel free to drop questions in the comments below about my recommendations or about nuances with those classes. You can also join the Discord and ask me directly. I'm very active there, along with the rest of the Azure Rogues, who are more than happy to offer a helping hand. If you're looking for people to play with because you're brand new and you don't know where to start, you can definitely join us. We are very active on Crystal, Coeurl, and Dynamis or Rafflesia. So if you're not sure which data center or server to pick, come to Dynamis, that's where I'm at, or come to Crystal because we have a branch there as well, and there will be plenty of people who are there to help you. And of course, if you want to ask me questions and kind of see what things look like at the end game, you can find me on Twitch a couple nights a week. Tuesdays are always Final Fantasy XIV days, and I'm usually doing end game content there. No spoilies, it's all just end game content like raids and Savage, and so you can see what the hardest stuff looks like. If you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. I will continue to make content that is helpful, informational, or just discussions, because I really like chatting about this stuff. And it really helps me to grow out the channel and keeps me encouraged to continue working on videos like this. With that, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Right? I'll see you in the next one, right? I almost spilled my drink.